Welcome, everybody, to another session of the Safe Senior Hour with Joe Gavalis. I hope all is well in your lives and with your loved ones. And today we're going to just go over and summarize some of the successes and cases that have been done throughout the world, and including the United States, and concerning elder abuse. We have some new scams that are on the horizon that we've addressed. I was at a seminar this last week, and it was addressed the new scams, and I think we might have touched on it last week, but it's really been stressed. And that would be the one ring call scam. This apparently there's been over I think 1 million attempts at trying to pull this scam off, but we have heard that from various people throughout the United States that this scam has been going on, and they are concerned that enough people aren't going to pay attention to it, to the warning. The scam goes like this: your phone will ring once and hangs up, and you wonder, well, who called? And then you look at it, and it's a number, and it might be it'll be an area code plus a number, and you say you don't recognize it. And remember, our guidance to everybody is, if you don't recognize the number, don't call it back. Well, one ring gets people's attention, like, oh boy, I just missed this call. They call it back, and a person gets on the phone and talks to you more and more about kind of innocuous things and seeing how you are and how's everything going. And you know, we have some interesting topics we can discuss to drag you out in the conversation. Well, what is happening once you call that number at with the area code? That area code is outside the United States, usually in the Caribbean, and that number will then be billed at such a huge amount. It can vary from $30 to $50 a minute. I've heard some things as much as 10 a minute, and I mean 50 a minute, but sometimes 10 a minute. But it's the initial connection is billed. Now, the uniqueness of this scam is that the money gets paid through the phone company or the service provider directly to the scammers. You don't see this until you get it on your bill. And when you get it on your bill, I don't know how many people check their phone bills or their cell phone bills, and all of a sudden it's gone up. Well, that's a reason. So remember, if you don't know what number it is when you see it on the screen, don't just call it randomly. It could be one of the scams. It's called the one ring scam. So as I said, we just heard that more and more people are receiving this type of call. And there was an estimate, I believe, over 1 million attempts were made using this scam. So just be alert, and I know we just put that out here through our task forces here for everybody to be alert about that. Remember, as we talk about elder abuse, that elder abuse doesn't report itself. And when we discuss elder abuse, I always want to go over it with everybody. We talk about 3 types of abuses: physical, financial, and institutional. And by far the biggest abuse is financial, with roughly the vast majority of those scams are done by loved ones or people that you trust. But also there are professionals out there that are playing playing the fraud game against the elderly, and everybody should be aware of what's happening. One of the biggest scams is called the grandparent scam, and we've talked about that on the air many times. And as I go around and speak to seniors, I just spoke to 45 seniors the other day, and in the group, 3 of the people had received calls on the grandparent scams. And to remind you what this is, it's a call from an individual who says either they're calling on behalf of someone's grandchild, and that grandchild has either been kidnapped in an accident or needs money, and that you, the grandparent, are the only ones that will help them, and that if the grandkids' parents find out that they will be in big trouble, so they can trust the grandparent, be a grandfather or grandmother. It is a horrible situation. Usually the calls come late at night or in the middle of the night, so like it's a real emergency, and try to get people to do things quickly and make decisions because they think there's just so much urgency involved. With that, out of the Central District of California for the United States Department of Justice, that's out of Los Angeles. The headlines were Canadian national who ran grandparent scam that swindled U.S. senior citizens sentenced to more than 4 years in federal prison. And the individual pled guilty to a 1 felony count of wire fraud and had 3 co-defendants. They were extradited from Canada in January, admitted in a plea agreement that the co-conspirators contacted their elderly U.S. victims by telephone. Sad situation, but this shows you the cooperation between U.S. authorities, local authorities, federal authorities, and in this case, the Canadian authorities. That the defendant and his co-conspirators fraudulently induced their victims to send them money by pretending to be the victim's grandchild or some other relative who was in distress in a foreign nation such as Canada, Mexico, Bolivia, or the Dominican Republic. One of the examples that they give, and these are important so you know this is what's really going on, and it's exactly what we've been telling everybody. In one, they represented that the grandson was in a car crash and needed money to cover a purported automobile accident expense. On other occasions, they would pretend to be the victim's grandchild that had been arrested and needed his grandparents' money to be released on bail. Now, this is coming from the person who's pleading guilty or pled guilty that was carrying on these scams. So we're getting this right from the perpetrator himself. That they would lie to the victim, meaning the unbeknownst grandparent, by telling them that there was a lawyer in contact with their grandchildren or other relative. He would direct the victims to wire via Western Union or MoneyGram money, listing the grandchild, other relative, or the name or the lawyer as the intended recipient. When the money was wired, the co-conspirators converted the funds to cash as quickly as possible before the victim could discover they had been fooled. On some occasions, the scammers called the victims again to solicit more money, falsely claiming the additional funds were needed by the grandchild or other relative to fully resolve the problem. And one particular example was an 86-year-old man wired $4,300 at the urging of an imposter as the man's grandson who claimed to have been involved in an accident in Bolivia, according to court documents. There was no accident in Bolivia, and the person dished over that amount of money. The importance here is, and we've discussed this, and I'm familiar with another case where it's the same way. Once the money is paid, they'll go back again and again. In the case that I'm familiar with, there was a woman in Salem, Oregon, in her 80s who paid $9,000 to believe because her grandson was arrested, actually here in Georgia, on drug charges. She received a call from an imposter who claimed they were a drug enforcement agent, and that the grandson asked him to call his grandmother to get the $9,000. She did pay $9,000. Now the call was very specific when they said how to pay it. It was go withdraw the money in cash, put the cash in a magazine, put the magazine in a FedEx box, and FedEx it overnight to this address. And this special agent, whatever his name he used that time, it was, David Jones or David Smith. Well, it happened overnight. They got the $9,000. Well, the very next day they called her again, just as this perpetrator says they do, and they would hit her again for $9,000, saying they discovered more drugs. She went and got the $9,000 and sent it again. Well, they received that, and again, according to the perpetrator, they went back to the well and said, "We need $15,000." They discovered hidden compartments in a car. The woman said she didn't have it and had to go to the bank and cash a CD. The gentleman, the perpetrator, said, "I'll give you 2 hours and I'll call you back." The woman claimed, the grandparent claimed, she just broke down in tears. She was running out of money. She wanted to help her son. They constantly warned her not to call her grandson's parents. With that, she heard a knock on the door while the 2 hours, and it was her grandson. She asked him, what was he doing here? He was supposed to be in jail in Georgia, and he said he's never been in Georgia. And they reported to the authorities. The point of this story is it's exactly like what this perpetrator says he does. And there's an example. And this is another group of people who are doing the grandparent scam. The importance in this is the matter was investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States, Secret Service, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The Federal Trade Commission provided substantial assistance. Now, I'm going to be reading and going through a lot of these cases, and just to let you know that the federal government in the United States and other countries are taking these crimes against the elderly serious on these financial scams. This is a perfect example of what happened here concerning a grandparent situation. And they, in this case here, the one gentleman from Nova Scotia who was the lead defendant was ordered to pay $500,000 in restitution to more than 80 victims. Ladies and gentlemen out there, it is imperative that you pass this on to your loved ones, your friends, and don't be taken by this. This is a serious situation, and here's an example of an actual case. Somebody was caught. They had over $500,000 was taken, and so and restitution was ordered, and these people are now going to prison. Again, congratulations to law enforcement for helping to stop this scam. With that, this will conclude our second segment. We'll move in our next segment. We'll go into more actual cases where people are being prosecuted.
The disease of addiction is a life-altering challenge, not just for the person suffering its effects, but also for the family and friends who support and love the one caught in its grasp. What should be the course of treatment? Who is the best person to render treatment? And what is the best place to go for the care that is needed? We know that you want answers to these and many more questions. Call 770-696-9862 and speak to a representative of the Atlanta Healing Center. They can tailor a program specifically designed to address the needs of the person suffering with an addiction, or give you guidance as to where that help may be found. Information is the key, and the trained staff at AHC is here to assist. If you wish, you can also get more information on the website located at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
This is Ron Camacho, host of the Business Hour, on Fridays from 10 to 11 a.m. Join me as I talk with passionate professionals on a program that profiles the best businesses, business professionals, business practices, and fascinating individuals to get an insider view of how America works. 10 to 11 a.m. on America's Web Radio.
Get your pen and paper ready. If there's a move in your near future, I'm here to tell you that the folks I used and now recommend is Around Town Movers. Timothy and the guys recently moved me, and I am and was totally satisfied with a sometimes not so fun experience moving. Call Timothy at 770-378-4708 and make it a good move and a good experience. Around Town Movers for that local or cross-country move. Timothy, Around Town Movers, in my opinion, are the best. That's Around Town Movers. Call them.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And we're back on America's Web Radio and the Safe Senior Hour. And there are two things that I want to mention. This is David Moxley, and some of you know who I am and some of you don't, but it doesn't matter. I obviously have a microphone, so I can talk. Anyway, one thing is that I had mentioned to Joe is that I got a call the other day, and I'm a senior citizen. In other words, I'm old. And Moses was a good friend, so they figured they had one on the line. And when I noticed the number, it was a 636 number, and I can't remember the next few digits, but the last four digits were the last four digits of my Social Security number. Now, I've had a lot of people say, well, that was just coincidental, but being in the business that I'm in, doing this show every week, it got my attention that, I didn't know the number. I'd never heard of it. It didn't pop up as a number that I should have known. But as a senior citizen, I noticed that how many times a day or how many times a month are we asked for, well, give me the last four digits of your Social Security number. So I don't personally think it was a coincidence. So you might just keep that in mind if you get a telephone call from somebody or something or whatever it is, and you don't recognize the number, but you see the last four digits of your Social Security. Be very careful. Be very, very careful. I didn't call him back, nor will I call him back. I didn't answer the phone call. I wouldn't. In fact, I deleted it as quickly as I could because I didn't want to make a mistake and ever call it. With that being said, I wanted to put a shout out that and thank Fox News in that this was the second day. Today, this morning at 6:27, their break, they were doing a show on scams, and they had a author on that's written a book on Outsmart the Scammers, I believe is the title of it, and we're going to try to find out who it was and try to get him on the air at some point here on America's Web Radio. But I wanted to thank Fox. I don't know who they've got that is tuned in to America's Web Radio, but this is like the fourth time. They did an ad the other day. I say the other day, about a month and a half ago was the romance scam, and they hadn't been doing anything about adult scams or adult abuse or any of the scams. Nothing until we started the show about 4 months ago, wasn't it? 4 or 5 months ago?
Right. 6 months ago. Yeah.
6 months ago. But Fox had not been doing a thing about addressing the problem, but they are now, and I want to thank them. They're a lot bigger than we are, and they have a big viewing audience, and we appreciate the fact that I almost feel flattered that they have to be listening to us and picking up on our shows. They picked up on the Safe Senior Hour, obviously. They've picked up and done shows now because of our classic car show, which I find interesting. And they've had a couple of our hosts on. And with the hosts, they readily admitted that, yes, we do watch or listen to America's Web Radio. They couldn't get out of it. How did you hear about me? Well, we we heard you on a radio show. So, Fox, thank you very much. And I think the old saying, there's no better compliment than to be copied. And Fox is doing a good job. And the important thing is that America's Web Radio, we are dedicated to one thing, and that's informing and being an advocate, just like we're running ads right now for Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. This is a program that's going on for and to combat rape. And this program, America's Web Radio, has sponsored and is a part, or I say a part, our part of it is that we're getting the word out about the Walk a Mile in Her Shoes that'll be coming up 1st of October, and we want to encourage people to go to our website. The first thing you see on our website now is Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. You can click it and register to Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. This is very important. Only 6% of the reported rapes wind up in the rapist getting charged and being convicted. Wow. Beyond that, the victim is again victimized when they go to court. And this is totally unfair. There's a case here that's totally unfair. And I think, Joe, I've talked to you about it in the past. So anyway, America's Web Radio is trying our best with our audience to advocate for the underdog and try to help them. So with that being said, I'm going to turn the show back over to Joe and whatever he's got going on there.
Great. Thank you, David. And I do think remember, if you see something or, report it, no matter whatever it is, and that's certainly the reporting and trying to get more of these rape cases prosecuted is very important, because these people, a lot of times, they're just predators out there, and that's sad. It's very sad. For our listeners, if you paid attention I think about a show ago, we talked about another scam that we're starting to see here in Georgia, but it's been around the country. It was called the Grant, G-R-A-N-T scam. And in this scam, where people, it just happened, and this is from Salt Lake City, Utah. The Attorney General's office there in Utah is warning his residents that some people reported a new scam that impersonates the Utah Attorney General, according to the news release. Victims of the scam were sent Facebook messages offering them grants worth thousands of dollars from an account pretending to be the Attorney General. The scammer said a small fee must be paid in order to receive the grant money. The news release stated, in addition, the victims are told they had to fill out a series of grant application questions from a phony personnel page the scammer sent. After the application was approved, the victim sent the payments. The grant checks were given to each person, but when the victims tried to cash their checks, they bounced. By that time, as one of the reporters doing the story said, the scammers had disappeared along with the victim's money. That another victim told an investigator the scammer gave them a phone number to contact about further about the grants. When that number was contacted, they were concerned it was fraudulent. The office confirmed that neither the Attorney General nor his office were involved in the situation. Remember, real lotteries, grants, or prizes, according to the Attorney General for Utah, this is an announcement they made, don't ask for money, not even for shipping, taxes, or customs. And state officials and agencies will likely never ask persons to send money for prizes, grant, unpaid loans, or to avoid being thrown in jail. In the cases where a state agency do ask for money, it's done through a formalized process. And we've talked to you on the air many times. Do not wire money to strangers is probably the best advice. And before you conduct business, it's usually good to check the reputation of the business or entity who's asking for the money on online, Better Business Bureau, wherever your state, local, or in your country you're in, your resources. Even if the call seems legitimate, people should always contact the entity directly and should never give out their personal information, including banking information, birthday, or Social Security numbers. This is part of the notice that the Utah Attorney General put out to his citizens. Again, my hat's off to Utah for getting on this real quick when it was brought to their attention, and I think people should be aware. Remember, if it's too good to be true, you can count on it. It wasn't true. But this is one of the new scams, and I just thought it was nice to update everybody, especially how this originated. It was originated where was sent Facebook messages offering them grants. So you might be seeing something coming to you by Facebook. Please be careful of any of these grant scams. They're out there, and report it to your law enforcement, state or federal or country agency. But that's a pretty significant one right there. And we had talked about that. So that's two of the ones that we have warned everybody about, this and the grandparent scam. And you have to remember, these people, the scammers, are all professionals. That's what they do for a living, and they'll find a way to do it, and they'll get the money, whatever it takes, because that's all they're out for, is to remove the funds from you and put it in their pocket. And remember, it's a good time to remind everybody, why are seniors targeted? Well, number one, we're very trustworthy. Our generations, a handshake would close a deal. Your word is as good as your bond. The elderly seniors have been able to save a little bit of money. Could be a lot of money, but certainly a little bit of money. So they have money at their disposal. A lot of them are lonely and want to talk to people or get involved in some kind of a transaction where there's constant contact. As you notice, the scam I just gave you, they gave a phone number to call. To conduct business on the internet. But the third is that we love our families and our kids. But don't forget, most of our kids, and when you look in this generation, your kids are 50, 60 years old. So it's your grandkids, and most grandparents think they can raise the grandkids better than the parents can. Or that's been my experience talking to people. So that's just a mixture that the fraudsters look at and will target. I was at a seminar where a federal agent who had worked overseas and had arrested several of these scammers. And the two things that I got out of it primarily, three things. One, there's no way to arrest your way out. Is educate, educate, educate. And that's what we were told. Educate the public, educate the seniors not to take part, not to be gullible and get involved in these scams, number one. Number two, that the scammers will target seniors. And I just went through the three reasons why. Trusting people, a little bit of money, and the scams involving their families, they're more likely to participate. And three is that they tend to try to target, if they can, rural areas, because they feel that the law enforcement, there's just not that many law enforcement numbers. A lot of times sheriff's departments, police departments have a small amount of investigators, and so they'll target the rural areas. And we have seen that here, that many of these frauds are done by are perpetrated on people who live in rural areas. And this is very significant because everybody asks when I go out and physically speak to the seniors. The question on their mind, and they'll ask it different ways. But why me? Why? How did they pick me out? Well, you're just one of the people that they have randomly targeted to perpetrate their scams on. It might be they got it from a list that was sold on the internet. It might be they got it from stolen ID information. Whatever it is, you have done nothing wrong. That's why we say if you don't know who's calling you, don't answer the phone. Let them leave a message. Please let them leave a message. And then listen to it, and then you independently call the company or whatever the issue is. Like when you get in the jury scams where you get a call saying you missed jury duty, which is very prevalent here in the United States, you independently call the sheriff's department or call the court and say, listen, I don't believe I was subpoenaed, but somebody's trying to say I'm going to come out, I'll be arrested if I don't pay a certain amount of money. And that happens a lot all over the country, but particularly in the rural areas. So I think that's a thing to remember. So we're going to end the second segment. We'll move into our third segment on some more different scams and arrests.
Get your pen and paper ready. If there's a move in your near future, I'm here to tell you that the folks I used and now recommend is Around Town Movers. Timothy and the guys recently moved me, and I am and was totally satisfied with a sometimes not so fun experience moving. Call Timothy at 770-378-4708 and make it a good move and a good experience. Around Town Movers for that local or cross-country move. Timothy, Around Town Movers, in my opinion, are the best. That's Around Town Movers. Call them.
Your auto love and investment demands the best, and for 45 years, Passport Transport has been meeting those demands. From manufacturers to the one-car collectors and all other facets of the auto industry and antique auto hobby. The first and the finest with unequaled service and peace of mind. Passport Transport, your auto transportation company. Contact PassportTransport.com with your need today. Passport Transport.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Well, welcome back to our third segment of the Safe Senior Hour, and today we're going over various cases that have been made throughout the country and the world on scammers, and just reiterating things that you can do to prevent yourself from being scammed. We have been through a case where there was a grandfather, a grandparent scam. Then we talked about a grant scam. And now we're going to talk about something we have told everybody that's near and dear is the IRS scam. And a lot of people, as I speak to seniors, almost every group I've spoken to, at least 1, 2, maybe up to 5 people have received calls from the IRS, allegedly from the IRS, saying you owe money, and if you don't pay, you'll be arrested. Now this comes from Illinois, which is where Chicago is in the United States. That a month earlier, 2 men used a fake ID to collect $220,000 in cash victims had mailed to addresses in Wisconsin after being targeted by scams. Wisconsin's a bordering state here in the United States. 2 gentlemen of Illinois were charged in a federal indictment with 6 counts of mail fraud. They described themselves as a runner for a larger enterprise, likely based in India. That operation in India would call people around the United States and claim to be agents with the IRS, FBI, or Social Security Administration and convinces them they face imminent arrest if they don't send cash to cover taxes or other government obligations. The indictment in a prior criminal complaint indicates the scheme started in India would call or text the two individuals who were arrested in the United States with specifics about where to pick up packages of cash, either at a vacant address or at a Walgreens shipping center. That on one case, that an individual in Brooklyn mailed two packages containing a total of $34,500 to a Milwaukee address on April 5th. On April 9th and 10th, an Oregon woman sent a total of $53,000 in two mailings to Milwaukee. And a victim in New York sent $13,000 to another area. And someone in Las Vegas mailed $35,000 to a Wisconsin address. The IRS spokesman came out and gave this advice, and we have given this over and over again, but it's well worth repeating. People should recognize the warning signs of an IRS scam. The IRS does not call out of the blue demanding people pay immediately by using a certain method like cash, gift cards, prepaid debit cards, or wire transfers. And it never threatens to involve law enforcement. If you legitimately owe taxes, you would generally get a bill in the mail, and you would never have to pay without a chance to question or appeal the amount. This comes from the IRS. If you get a call from the IRS and you don't owe taxes or have any reason to think you do, hang up immediately. It's a scam, according to this IRS spokesperson. But here's an example. Starts in India. They have runners in the United States, and it's the same MO. You owe money, and if you don't want to be arrested, here's the way to pay what you owe. So this will not be on your record. And again, the government does not take iTunes cards, Blue Dot cards, these cards like that. They want cash, check, or whatever currency that you have, or hard currency. But that's another example. That's the IRS scam. So we've had the grant scam we talked about, the grandparent scam, and this is the IRS scam. We've also talked about in the past, which I thought was very interesting, and I see this too when I speak with seniors, and that's the tech support scam. And we have here in the Southern District of Illinois, which again it's I believe this is like Springfield. That we have two individuals who pled guilty, charging them with conspiracy to commit wire fraud in the process that their business, formerly known as, quote, First Choice Tech Support, was a scam. Now, these people, we talk about tech support, and if anybody who is, gets on their computer, and I've seen it on mine, and I'm sure other people, I know other people have seen them, but we've warned you about these that come up. According to the court documents in this case, the defendants purchased pop-up advertisement that would appear suddenly on a person's computer screen. We've all seen that. The pop-ups were made to look like system warnings and falsely informed the victims that serious problems such as viruses or malware had been detected on their computer. Often the pop-ups cause the person's internet browser to freeze up and stop responding. I've had that happen to me. The pop-ups also typically warn the victims not to shut down their computers, or else they would lose all their data. Instead, the ad directs them to call a toll-free number where they were connected to a sales rep who continued the fraud. And I haven't seen this, but when I speak to the seniors, there's some people that did call, and they were put to these sales reps because these seniors wanted their computer working. The sales rep would convince the victims to grant them remote access to their computers, where normal computer function and routine processes were highlighted as evidence of a serious problem. Victims were never told that the pop-up that had hijacked their computer were just advertisements purchased by the tech support company, or that in most instances they could make the pop-ups go away simply by rebooting their computer. Instead, they were sold remote tune-ups, and I've heard this from seniors as I've spoken to them, for $250 and an antivirus protection software for another $400. If the victims balked at the steep prices, the sales rep would offer them a discount for being a senior citizen or a military veteran or something else. Now, we have addressed this in one of our previous shows about these tech support scams, but here's somebody that pled guilty and basically have told us exactly how the scams worked. These two companies combined, that which these people pled guilty, combined to defraud more than 40,000 people. Victims were in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, several U.S. territories, all 10 Canadian provinces, the United Kingdom, and several other foreign countries. At least 57 victims were residents of Southern Illinois. All told, the two companies took in over $25 million in this scam. $25 million in the scam. 40,000 people. We all have to educate our friends, our loved ones, our associates. These are what are the professionals that are preying on everybody. This case was resulted in several guilty pleas, and they cover how much money each person claimed, but they were from all over. The salespeople were all over the United States. This case was started or was basically done by the United States Postal Inspection Service. We've had inspectors on our show talk about their work and what they do. And the Florida Attorney General cooperated in this. The Federal Trade Commission cooperated in this. This is a serious situation, and I want you all to be aware. Be concerned when you see these pop-ups come on. Try to reboot your computer, because that would help. And again, this is a serious situation. So with that, we're going to end our third our third segment of the Safe Senior Hour. Remember, elder abuse doesn't report itself, and we'll be back to talk about more frauds.
The disease of addiction is a life-altering challenge, not just for the person suffering its effects, but also for the family and friends who support and love the one caught in its grasp. What should be the course of treatment? Who is the best person to render treatment? And what is the best place to go for the care that is needed? We know that you want answers to these and many more questions. Call 770-696-9862 and speak to a representative of the Atlanta Healing Center. They can tailor a program specifically designed to address the needs of the person suffering with an addiction, or give you guidance as to where that help may be found. Information is the key, and the trained staff at AHC is here to assist. If you wish, you can also get more information on the website located at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
Again, I want to share our appreciation to Fox News that they're taking a look now at senior abuse and scams. It's amazing that they've started doing it after we've done the show now for 6 months, and then all of a sudden they decide they're going to do it as well. The bottom line is, the more attention we can get, if they're copying us, that's just fine. They did a commercial with a young lady saying, well, if you'll just send me $500, I'll fly out. Well, that's the romance scam, as a matter of fact. And we've been talking about this, or Joe has been talking about it, for 6 months now, and we certainly appreciate Joe and what he's done, and he's obviously gotten Fox News attention as they seem to be copying us on things. Not the first time. They've copied us on some classic car shows and classic car information, as well as talking about ethanol, which we talk about frequently on the classic car show. And also they, for a couple of months, every now and then, that have one of our hosts on. So we know that Fox News, if it's worth Fox News listening to us, it must be worth you listening to us, and we're glad you are listening. And thank you for your loyalty to this show and all of our shows on America's Web Radio, and we are trying to make a difference. And as I mentioned the scam earlier, be careful of the telephone number that you don't know that has your Social Security, the last 4 digits of your Social Security on the end of that telephone number. That'll sort of give you a wake-up call and surprise. We'll be back with more of Safe Senior Hour right after these messages.
This is David Donaldson with the Atlanta Healing Center, conveniently located in Lawrenceville, Georgia. At AHC, your success is our goal. Addiction recovery is about more than just not using. It's about becoming a whole person and addressing all aspects of your physical, psychological, and social needs. Please call us at 770-696-9862, or you can reach us on the web at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Well, welcome back to our final segment today of the Safe Senior Hour. Remember, elder abuse doesn't report itself. Today, we've been going through some of the successes around the country by the federal, state, local, and cooperating countries in prosecuting, arresting and prosecuting some of these fraudsters and scam artists. We've covered the tech support scam. We've covered the IRS scam. We covered the grant scam. We covered the grandparent scam of some convictions that or notices that have been put out by law enforcement about these scams, that they're on top of it. I just want to remind everybody, the United States government has committed the Department of Justice to a strategic plan to address issues in large-scale frauds that exploit vulnerable victims, and that they are really cracking down on it. I know here in Atlanta, we have a newly named coordinator of fighting these scams, and we're very appreciative of what they do and what the federal government does. Having been a retired federal agent myself, I realize the federal government can bring resources and manpower that other agencies can't, and when you work together, it's just a multiplier effect. So that's really significant. And our listeners can remember that we talk about lottery scams or Jamaican scams. Here out of the Southern District of Indiana, a Jamaican defendant was convicted of conducting lottery scams to defraud elderly victims throughout the United States of their retirement accounts, savings, and making death threats. So this is it's not unusual as this goes. Once you've accepted their gifts or whatever they're giving you, or your winnings, and you pay them money, you're on the hook with these people, or they think you are, and they continue to do different. They continue even after you try to stop the scam, and this is a perfect example. Here, a 23-year-old resident of Jamaica was sentenced to 34 months in federal prison after he admitted his guilt to devising a lottery scam that swindled elderly and vulnerable victims throughout the United States of their retirement accounts. The comment from the prosecutor is the defendant preyed on these elderly victims by taking from them through lies and deceit over a significant time period. Protecting the most vulnerable members of our society from these scammers, no matter where they reside, is top priority of the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Department of Justice. So this took place from these scammers took place from approximately April 2014 through September 2018. The defendant and others unknown residing in Jamaica defrauded and attempted to defraud elderly victims located throughout the United States in a complex lottery scam. The defendants and other representatives told the victims they were lottery contest winners who needed to pay certain taxes and fees to collect millions of dollars of their lottery winnings and or prizes. In reality, the victims were not actual lottery or contest winners. None of the victims received the money promised to them during the course of the scam. The defendants masked their identities through the use of various telephone applications and other technologies. And if you listen to our show, we kept telling you that people can make a telephone number look like it's from any place in the country. There are programs that they can purchase and buy to do this. They're usually done through they're called applications. These applications directed the victims to send money to the defendant and others in Jamaica to obtain their purported lottery or contest winnings. The defendant also directed the victims to send such money to other victims and individuals throughout the United States in an attempt to conceal the tracing of proceeds of the scam. The victims sent this money by mail and wire transfers such as Western Union, MoneyGram, U.S. Mail, and other means, most of which ended up in Jamaica. So the concept is, rather than send it directly, you send it to another person or somebody else in the United States. And then they would be contacted, those people, to send the money on to Jamaica. So the money would have an intermediate stop. And this is significant. When the victims attempted to stop contact with the defendant by changing telephone numbers, the victim says, I don't want to do it anymore. I now realize it's a scam. I never received the money. So they didn't want to be bothered, so they changed their telephone numbers. The defendant, once the numbers were changed, then searched for and used local businesses such as pizza delivery and taxi service to attempt to find out the new telephone numbers so the defendant could continue such contact. On one occasion, when a victim located in Indiana did not send the money as requested, the defendant threatened to... Now listen to this now. The defendant threatened to kill the victim and her family and sent individuals to her residence to try and collect the money. The defendant caused the victims to transfer over $90,000 and elsewhere in the furtherance of the scheme. This is outrageous. I will say this we all have to be careful when they do this. This is one of the few scams that I understand where they actually came to the house and demanded the money. A lot of times they will threaten that. I'm familiar with several cases where they will threaten it. They will follow up and say you owe the money, or they'll try to embarrass you with your family or with the community. But this is significant. The FBI gave the statement out in Indiana, targeting seniors and their savings money that worked hard to save over the lifetime is an intolerable crime. And the FBI won't stand by and let some of the vulnerable citizens be preyed upon in this manner, said the special agent in charge. I think this is an example of people who get so involved that they believe they won. And I will just read on a different level. I know in the Publishers Clearinghouse clearinghouse award sweepstakes, that people actually believe that they won it. And I know there's a woman in North Georgia that's out $60,000 because she absolutely believed that she won it, and all she was doing was paying, as they say, the upfront fees and taxes in order to collect her money. And when she decided to stop and got convinced that she didn't win it, this was about after 40,000, she received another call, because these people will stay on. They'll stay on your case. If you're giving money once, they'll come after you again for more money. So they waited a little bit here and told her, well, not only did she win the lottery, she won the Mercedes-Benz that goes with it. But that'll be another, it's a $150,000 car, but she had to put up $20,000 in fees, in port fees, to try to get the autos off the docks and get it delivered, the delivery fees, the setup fees. This woman bought into it again and paid $20,000. And I remember this came to me at a meeting of seniors when her sister approached me in tears and said, what can be done? You know, when people get hooked by these, as she said, these no good scoundrels and these scam artists, that it really, really hurts. And again, this is from rural Georgia. This is not in the city of Atlanta. This was in rural Georgia where this woman got taken. So anybody can be taken. Just don't be gullible. Please talk to somebody you trust before you start sending the money to people you don't know. That is just absolutely horrible. Remember, computers give people a lot of courage. So these people on the other end, you don't know who they are. Even if they send you a picture, you don't know who they are. So please check with the professionals, with law enforcement, with adult protection, or confide in somebody that you care with, and tell them what's going on. Please, that's for your safety. Again, elder abuse doesn't report itself. We need you to be out there passing this on and educating others to be looking out for these scams. And again, please, please, please report to the professionals. With that, that'll end this session of the Safe Senior Hour. And remember, elder abuse doesn't report itself.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the